Thank you guys for joining us here on this Tuesday morning. I have kind of an interesting topic for discussion today. This is something that our marketing partner Gravity had recommended as a topic that we run. We didn't necessarily know how much interest there would be in it, but really our focus today is to talk about how do we solve challenges for growing and scaling businesses. So this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I've had a lot of fun kind of talking with customers and working with our customers that have grown. And we're going to talk about a few, not only customer journeys, as well as Ontech's journey here through my employment. We're going to do some introductions. So like I said, I'm going to kind of talk through both a little bit of my background, as well as some of the customer background pieces that we'll talk through. We're going to go through some common challenges and areas of focus. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time today talking about ITIL framework. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, everybody, but our industry loves acronyms. So ITIL is a framework body that we'll talk through, as well as some road mapping things that Ontech does is a more simplistic way to get you started. And like I said, we should have plenty of time here for some Q&A at the end. A quote that I thought was kind of fitting as we started to plan this out, to look at this, is to really look at, growth is never by mere chance. It's the result of forces working together. And that's by James Cash Penney, the founder of JCPenney's, whose obviously business scaled and grew significantly before its inevitable downfall with a lot of brick and mortar. But as a business scales, technology really needs to align to meet business objectives. There's a balance between technology and forward thinking versus operation and workflow and what actually works for a business. In order for businesses to scale, meaning we can scale processes without necessarily needing to spend money, add resources, add time, we need to really look at how those forces can work together, how we can bring them to be one. And I thought this quote was kind of fitting as I started to explore that topic and how we crafted today's webinar. Some introductions. So I know most of you, the names that I see here on the call today, but for those that don't, I know I don't talk about it often due to me being with Ontech now for 12 years, 13 years. But before I joined Ontech, I spent most of my early career in startups and early stage. Some of those with companies that scaled significantly rapidly, others that fell flat on their faces. I was just a contributor there with most of those. So my experience isn't necessarily as much as the visionary and crafting, but more of the execution side of it. One of the core reasons I pursued the opportunity here that I have with Ontech is I wanted the ability to be able to create. That was something that I'd never had before. And that was something that was really exciting to me, was I needed to get to that point, but I had that opportunity to be able to create. And Ontech is going through some significant growth through my tenure here. I joined Ontech. We were 7 employees, single business unit in terms of Ontech Systems. We're now well over 40 employees. We have both the Ontech Systems side, our core business, and then we also started Ontech Talent. And I shouldn't even really say we, Nicole, Mark, certain individuals within Ontech started Ontech Talent. What's unique, though, with Ontech is we've had the ability to grow and see how we can leverage technology, and then we've taken some of that technology to our end customers. Some customer examples that we're going to talk through today. I've got a few pieces from a startup that we worked with that went from 3 employees with an idea to about 50 employees in about 24 months, 26 months. We'll talk about some of the challenges and then some of the objectives and things that they used to be successful as they started to add people. We're also going to talk about an HVAC vendor. When they started working with us, this was just 4 years ago now, they're about 200 employees. They're now north of 500 and still going. It's kind of crazy to me how much some of these industries have grown, and they're leveraging technology to help fuel that growth. And then the last customer example that we'll talk through today is a local community. It's actually a municipality that we've got that's gone through both growth in not just a population, but then also services and functions that they needed to be able to offer the community and how they were able to offer that to the community. Um, some good ideas or some topics here to share about growth and just my experience with businesses attempting to scale and grow. Um, my first job ever, my first formal job ever, I was a commissioned only sales rep. I was 18 years old. I worked on a team of 40 individuals, and we covered the US. In the 18 months that I spent with them, that 40 went to about 500. And this is what later became all the cell phone carriers' idea for their brick and mortar cell phone stores. Except we were serving a business unit. We were solely focused on business to business transactions. This is kind of how I started to see how technology can make my life easier. For those of you that know me personally, you know that I don't own a home computer. I actually don't really like technology all that much. I do like how it can help my life, but it's not something that it's ever consumed me. One of the things that I saw though um, in that position is we went from paper contracts. So this was, I don't know, mid 2000s, right around the financial crisis of 2008 there. And it was all paper contracts. So we'd go out, we'd meet with businesses, we'd execute a plan, we'd write up this contract, and then we'd have to go and input that contract into an order management system. You guys can imagine the inconsistency and inaccuracy of data of both manually writing out a contract and then manually inputting that contract into an order management system. This was the first time I saw an e-signature product. So the company that I had worked for started to explore e-signature tools. There's an abundance of them now between Adobe Sign, DocuSign. Everybody's got an e-sign product. What they did though is they took the electronic contract and they took it a step further. They used what's known as an RPA, a robotic process automation, to basically take fields because our contract was static. The data per company was always the same, where the phone number was, where the plans, the numbers, what we were reporting over, everything within that contract was stationary. What changed was that data that was inputted customer to customer. So a robotic process automation was able to take that stagnant data and then autofill that into the order management system. So it used to take us easily a couple hours, depending on the size of the contract, to input. Now automatically happened for us. We literally went and got the electronic signature done. That electronic signature then used the RPA to pull that into order management. All I then had to do as a human was do some quality assurance. So what this gave me back was time. And time was always the most stressed factor for us. We didn't have an infinite amount of time businesses were open to call on. So we really had to focus our effort with that. I also made some mistakes in my early career in companies that I joined. I joined companies that had decent ideas. Groupon still exists for those that are familiar with it and know it. What if I told you when Groupon first started, there was relatively about 10 competitors in the space. I worked for a primary competitor to Groupon, but we couldn't compete. Our infrastructure, our back end did not allow for the scaling. It didn't allow for the amount of users that Groupon or some of these other products were bringing. They also didn't have the reach from a marketing standpoint. They didn't bring enough to the table. So it's really one of those pieces as we talk about technology and how we can use it within scaling businesses. It's different industry by industry. It's going to be different even business by business within a similar industry. It's never going to be the same. Some common challenges, and this is something that I think most people are going to be able to relate to at least a few of these. I tried to keep it super simple and not throw everything out under the sun. But I promise you, your peers here that are on this webinar today have some of the same challenges you have, maybe just in a little bit of a different way. Infrastructure is one of the core limitations that we see, whether that's an outdated system, poor network capacity, software limitations. We pick on outdated stuff, the inability to potentially integrate systems and connect multiple systems together. Security risks. Unfortunately, we will talk a little bit about security today. I tried to avoid that as much as possible. And another hot button topic word I've tried to avoid, but they do creep into here a little bit. But more risks, more users, more devices. It's just the nature of as you add people, you add complexity. Scalability, the ability for systems to grow. Systems that potentially work for a workflow or a function now, but are they going to work 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when you have potentially more people serving that. A good example is we talk scalability, and kind of one of my commitments here is to share a little bit about Ontech and what we're doing. Consistency matters for scalability. So I lost one of my teammates this year here due to medical. I had to step back in and take over his book of business, about 65-ish customers. I realized as I stepped back into it, I had a scalability issue, not necessarily just with my time and my ability to do it, but I also was so far removed for some of the processes now that me trying to step back in is harder. It's more difficult. It's also not as templated as it could be. Knowledge constraints. This is one of the number one pieces that you will beat your head up against, and there's not a ton you can do about it. Emerging tech and how it constantly changes, evolves, how technology can fit with your business. My biggest recommendation, and we talk about it a little bit more in the knowledge constraint slide, but go to your peers, go to others, network, collaborate. That is the easiest and best way to find how emerging technology potentially play a role in your business. Resource constraints. Everybody on this call, I don't believe we have anybody that even makes what would be considered like mid-market to companies like Microsoft, so 500 employees plus. Every one of you has limited budgets and staff. Time and money are always going to be limited. If you were the NSA and you had infinite dollars, you probably wouldn't be on the webinar because you wouldn't have the challenges that you're running into. The other core function that happens as companies grow is compliance oversight and the complexities that happen with that. Depending on the vertical you're in, if you're in a regulated industry, compliance gets more difficult as you grow. Putting things in at the base level is easier to then scale into. So let's talk about infrastructure and scalability at a little bit of a deeper level. My opinion, infrastructure and scalability go hand in hand. For those that have heard me talk a lot, you will hear I am not necessarily a go cloud individual. Cloud definitely offers the best ability to scale systems, applications, just due to the nature of data centers. No matter what you do as a small business, you can buy servers, you can buy infrastructure, you can buy as much as you want, but you're never going to be able to compete with the compute power that a data center brings. You'll never be able to compete with the compute power that a company like Microsoft has. So as we talk about that customer that went from 3 employees to 50, this was a really good example of something that they had. They started cloud. They wanted to be cloud, and it worked for them. It also worked for their workflows. This was something that was really important as that business started to grow, is it was less and less about being able to bring technology, but more about having technology that allowed them to continue to add people to teams, but not have to change. So the example there was they were looking at an on-prem file server versus SharePoint Online. Now, file servers have come a long way since this was looked at a couple years ago, but SharePoint provided the flexibility and ability for multiple people to work on documents at the same time. It allowed for workflows to be created. So, i.e., employee A gets their job done, they then start a workflow that sends it to employee B for employee B to do their job with that document. That was something that a file server, no matter what we did with it, could not provide. So infrastructure doesn't necessarily just matter as the physical components. It's also the software makeup that's out there. The flip side of it, and why I put the maybe for cost efficiency, is recurring charges. That's one of the drawbacks to subscriptions or cloud. At 3 users, the cloud is super palatable to that customer because it was cheap. When you started to stack up and now you're at 50 employees on those SKUs, what used to cost you roughly, I think it was $80 a month roughly, now all of a sudden is costing upwards of well over $2,000 a month in recurring. So is there enough business value from that recurring expense? And that's where doing things like total cost of ownership, which we talk about here later in budgeting, matter. You can kind of start to look at and stack, here's my way of doing it. It's going to cost me X amount of dollars over a 5-year period versus buying that hardware. What provides the business a better value? What provides the users better functionality, better workflow capability? There are certain break-even points that happen with the cloud. And that's one of the unfortunate realities is as you get onto the cloud, it becomes really, really hard to leave it. A couple other things that have happened over the years with infrastructure. The integrations of applications through APIs has created entire ecosystems of tools. This is where we see those that are really attempting to modernize, legacy systems. I know there's some manufacturing customers on here, and we'll pick on them a little bit. And they're old school ERP systems. For years and years and years, those ERP systems were built with that one singular purpose. It was meant for production planning. Some of them did tag stuff onto it, like accounting mechanisms or order management, ordering systems, procurement systems. But the ERP as a whole was really meant to track that manufacturing process. What's happened over the last couple of years is instead of the software provider trying to customize these other modules, you've seen them partner with other companies that do a function that they're not good at, and then allow a hook in via an API. So think about it as you're doing your resource planning. If you can really take that step back and instead of having to manually input data between those systems, we can use AI and APIs to pull data within those. I promise I'm not going to talk a ton about AI today, but we are going to. It's going to play a role in a few key areas. The other big thing that's starting to drive with infrastructure and then as well as scalability is the scalability of time. So when we look at, as an example, the ability to take data to make decisions, how can we make decisions faster? How can we drive decisions and then look and reflect on decisions of, was that the right choice or not? And that's where having these analytics, having these systems and tools that are interconnected really play a role in how they can accomplish that, how you can make that decision. A term that you hear in our industry, I don't remember if this was Microsoft that did this, Pax8. This is definitely not an Ontech statement, but it's fail fast, fail forward, failing better. And that's what data allows you to do. As you grow a business, as Ontech has grown, we've bought in some dumb stuff. We've implemented some silly things. We've made poor decisions. And that's traditionally when we've made poor decisions, it's because we didn't have all the right data. We didn't have all the right things that we needed to really make that decision. But automation and integration have, I'd say, probably the biggest capability to improve business operation if your software systems tools can support it. And that's why as you start to explore tools and technology within your tech stack, I encourage people a lot to not only think about, again, what do we need today, but what can make users' lives easier? Go out and survey your end users, understand what they're struggling with, and understand then how we can take these new platforms to improve that. Knowledge and resource constraints. Ontech, here's where I'll pick on us. We have a ton of competing priorities. For those of you that know, we recently moved into we bought a building last year. We just moved upstairs April of this year. We have a ton of things that we would like to spend money on within the building, just the building itself. Then you stack on people and training. Then you stack on operational goals and initiatives. Then you stack on wanting to potentially expand up into a new market in the Fox Valley. We have competing priorities for our resources. As much as I would love for Mark to give me just a blank check, I know that's not necessarily feasible or possible. So how do we deal with that? How do we choose where money goes? And part of the focus here, especially those of you that sit in a leadership level, it's about trying to get out of working in the business and focus on the business. This is something that Ontech at our executive leadership level is focused on significantly the last couple of years, is really operations, the day-to-day versus strategy. How do we come up with that strategy of where we want to go? Technology is going to constantly move. Looking out 5 to 10 years has become really, really difficult to do just at the pace of those changes. The challenge hits both the IT professionals, us, and your end users. Users have fatigue at this point. It's something that we're realizing and we're seeing as the pace of technology changes. They can't keep up to continue to learn the new platforms, new things as often as they once could. There are power users that really dive into things, but for the most part, users just want simplicity. They want less friction to be able to work and do their day-to-day job. So how can we reduce that friction and how can we talk with them about what's happening? Training and videos. This is one of the pieces. If you guys aren't leveraging AI today, this is kind of my first big play for it. Is AI's got the potential to really provide a tremendous amount of value in the business world, but there's a curve to usage and impact that it can provide. AI's also accelerated the attack chain, but generative AI. So for those that don't know, generative AI would be your co-pilots, your chat GPTs. Those can help in a bunch of different ways. So a first example here, it wrote some of this presentation. This graphic that you see in most of the graphics that are used. I didn't use a lot of the graphics that it generated, but it made a lot of the content. It reduced the amount of time it took me to prepare to put the presentation together. Last week at a conference, I used Copilot to actually write code. I also used it to solve a puzzle or a riddle that I couldn't figure out myself in the allotted time. That generative AI component, it can really provide and fill a knowledge gap and give time back to users. That puzzle, as an example, for those that know me, I really like puzzles. I'm a big riddle type fan. I got stuck. I couldn't get past it. Copilot, I simply fed it the prompt, and within 30 seconds, it had already pushed through not only where I was stuck, but it also solved the last two factors without me even needing to tell it. And that's kind of what that generative piece can do. Another way AI is easily able to slot in is agents. I don't know how familiar people are going to be with this term yet, but an agent think of an agent as a bot. It's essentially a chat bot with a little bit better data and knowledge. So the first agent that Ontech's looking at right now is a sales agent. And what this would do is it provide the ability for a salesperson like me to ask the agent to research a prospect and develop me a campaign plan to try to work with that prospect. The data sources that the bot is able to look at is our CRM, the prospective customer's website, as well as Zoom info. So our contact, our database app, our buyer intent application. So essentially I can use this tool to research and provide me ways to attempt to facilitate a conversation with that prospect. The benefit of allowing it to go and search the open internet is it can go and look at publicly internet sources like social media to see, do they have thought leadership from their leaders that are talking about initiatives, goals, functions that prospective customer is wanting to accomplish. It can also look at media and press releases. Have they put something out there? Is this organization trying to accomplish something here over the next 12 months, 18 months, whatever that interval might be? And this is a pre-built agent. This is an agent that you don't necessarily actually have to put any effort or energy into yourself. This is a default agent within Copilot. The HR agent is the next one that we really want to look at. And this is one that we will build ourselves. The AI agent really has one primary purpose, and that is to reduce the amount of questions our staff asks Jackie, our office manager, on HR stuff. Most of this data they could find themselves between our handbook or our benefits guide. But again, it's easier for the user to just go ask instead of having to read it yourself. It's really easy to just go ask Jackie, hey, Jackie, what's our pay period? What holidays do we have this year? What's the mileage reimbursement policy? Whatever it is, she gets an abundance of questions on the HR functions. So the goal is we're going to teach that HR bot. We're going to provide it both Wisconsin state law for employment. We're going to provide it that. We're going to provide it our handbook, and we're going to provide it our benefits book. And then we're going to provide it a few document libraries within Ontech SharePoint that house and contain guides or company processes that somewhat tie into HR. And our goal with this bot is if we can reduce 50% of the inquiries that go to Jackie, we should be able to free Jackie up for a couple hours a week. If you look at Jackie's role, I don't know how many on the call know Jackie, but she's got way more things to be doing than worrying about people's HR needs. If the bot can't answer the question, and if it can't figure it out or it can't identify it through the data sources that are available to it, it then will prompt and provide the user Jackie's contact info and our outsourced HR person's info. So the ability for us to then take this manual thing that Jackie was having to take emails, Teams, walk-ups, and then provide info, go look up or find, hey, this is how you log into the HRIS portal. This is how you submit a PTO request. all of that is now contained within the bot. The next set of agents that we're looking at is we really want to look at agents that allow our technicians to ask questions. So setup guides as an example. Same thing there. We're really still looking at how do we craft what's allowed to the bot for data. But we want to, and the reason for this is for those that have used and worked with AI so far, it can't necessarily decipher what's true versus potentially untrue. So as we look up setup guides and troubleshooting, the debate comes in, do you really provide it forums where any user could go and post things, say things, put in steps that could be accurate or inaccurate? Or do you solely limit that data source to just the manufacturer's setup guides? And this is some of that nuance as we look at these agents and how we craft them in terms of what data they have available to them to answer questions. But AI is definitely going to help facilitate both the knowledge gap, being able to help people with their skills, as well as resource and time. If it can give time back or time focused in other areas, that's important, that's critical. Security and compliance risks. So as your organization grows, so is your attack surface. Think of your attack surface as a really fancy way of just mapping out where is everything within the business that could be susceptible. Most of it starts from the outside, so the internet into your internal network. But if you don't have a good inventory of that, managing risk and managing security is going to become more difficult. You can also start to look at how you build your strategy by looking at your attack surface. Ontech, as an example, we chose to predominantly do all cloud for applications. We have no server infrastructure anymore. We keep nothing within our four walls. And we did that purposely. We wanted to both reduce our reliance on physical infrastructure that was tied to this location, mainly because we're such a mobile-focused organization to begin with. And then the second core piece to that decision-making process when we looked at it was the security. Instead of having to worry about everybody coming inbound into our office, it was easier for us to put things up into cloud apps. We can manage and maintain and log those cloud apps, no different than if they were within our four walls. But really, as we look at attack surface, the joke that everybody always hears me make, it's kind of like outrunning the bear in the woods. If you're out in the woods with your friends and you guys stumble across a bear, you just don't want to be the slowest. At the end of the day, again, you have that resource constraint of not having infinite money. So how we look at compliance and that risk of security and that attack surface becomes, where do we get our biggest return? Security is also not convenient. But when you start with that security first approach, this becomes easier. At the end of the day, we want to reduce the amount of friction users have to use technology. So if we think about that user experience, how can we make this easier for them, but also still maintain a security level as we continue to grow? That's really important of how those two line up. If you're an established business with an established tech stack, this does become harder. That's the unfortunate reality. You've got existing technology and processes that are in play. How do you make changes to those while still allowing the business to function as needed? A couple emerging pieces in security that we think are important to kind of highlight. Password vaults are becoming really, really common and easier ways for users to store their passwords, their material, rather than web browsers or the little book that somebody keeps. Single sign-on. So MFA is still going to be that, or two-factor, whatever term you want to use, is still going to be the end-all, be-all. But single sign-on, this is something that Ontech's exploring quite a bit of. How can we hide all of our web apps behind a singular sign-on? Instead of worrying about trying to protect identities at 3, 4, 5 different web services, if we can just have to worry about protecting our Microsoft M365 identity, how does that free us up then to focus elsewhere, where this is the only identity I have to secure, because you need that identity to then be able to log into our ticketing system, to our documentation portals, whatever other platform you may want to get into. And then things like zero trust as they start to emerge. I don't know how many of you on here have heard about a zero trust as a function, but we're seeing this more and more where, especially in regulated industries, if you're in defense industrial base, you're in some of the government entities, zero trust has become a topic the last 2 years that you're obligated to look into. Private sector, not as much. But what this is no user users want to be able to just do their job. They don't want to have to interrupt IT to get something installed. So zero trust allows for things like just-in-time admin access. So normally 9 out of 10 times, say I'm on my computer, I don't have admin rights on my device. However, I do need to install this piece of software in order to do my job. I don't want to really open up a ticket for IT to have it flow through them to get that approved, or have them have to physically install the software that I need installed. So that just-in-time admin access, depending on how it's configured, we can set it up to where, hey, this user can request admin access. They get it for 10 minutes while they do their software update, and then we take it back afterwards. We can also allow it to say they have it for certain applications. So let's talk about like CAD and AutoCAD and some of those software applications. If we know CAD has consistent updates, whether that's monthly or quarterly, we can program that zero trust function to say, hey, if this manufacturer software with this certain hash, with this certain signature from this software provider needs an update, we're going to just let that user run that update. But if this criteria isn't met, we're not going to allow that update to run. So those have really unique ways of allowing users to still be able to function without a lot of impact, but have better control over what they're capable of doing. That empowerment when needed. AI has really accelerated the attack chain. And this is something that I know we've done a lot of security webinars, so I don't want to spend a significant time on it here this morning. But essentially what's happened here is what used to take bad actors weeks or months to figure out, AI is now condensing that timeline. So attack chains that we used to see take 30 to 90 days are now taking a day to a week at most to execute. That puts the onus on better visibility, better identification. It also is allowing unskilled people. I made that reference the other day or a few slides ago, where last week at a conference, I used AI to write code. I am not a coder. I have zero idea how to truly write code. But bad actors can use some of these tools. There's guide rails to try to help prevent that from happening, but so far it's really not been effective. So how we deal with these accelerated attacks, how we work through it, is going to be a challenge. And it's going to be something that there's not a silver bullet to take. Regulated industries, you guys face a far more unique challenge as you scale. I talked about that local community partner of ours that we work with. They went from, I don't know, I think it was about 10 years ago to maybe village staff of about 30 people to now village staff of well over 100. I'm going to talk specifically about the police department in their case, just because of the amount of technology that inputted itself into that department over the last 3 to 4 years. So this municipality, they went on a department that had really contracted out a decade ago to the county, to then having their own department chief and a couple officers. So now they've got 3-shift patrol, a minimum of 5 cars out in the field in the community at any one given time. That police department over the last 10 years has gone from no body cams to body cams, drones, street cameras and flock cameras, if you know what those are, integration into alarm systems with school districts due to the emerging threats and issues that we're seeing there. They've had to bring all of this technology in while still attempting to maintain compliance with CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information System standards set forth by the federal government. So not only do we have a scale of business growing, more people, we also have more technology that's being used than ever before. One of the core ways that we help them scale that technology and then also train and coach users on the use of it was really by having consistent methodology for how it was deployed. This community made basically a council for how they talk about emerging technology and how they then bring it to their municipality. And you see this a lot too with AI. You see AI councils within businesses as they look at how do we want to adopt it and use it. What you don't want is shadow IT, where every end user just goes and grabs whatever they think is going to work. You really want to focus that time, effort, and energy on this is what is best for the business. But these guys used an ITIL framework that I'm going to talk about here in a second as they look to really mature their IT offering. And that worked with us in conjunction. This community's also gotten to a point where we're now at the stage of telling them they need to hire an IT person. They've grown so much we'll gladly continue to take the money from them, but at the end of the day, where they're going, their direction, it's about that future planning, that future state, and that future state needs to include an on-site IT person for them. Budgeting for growth. I really feel badly about this one because subscriptions, I'm even annoyed with it. Everybody is converted to subscription models for pretty much almost all services nowadays. And this all started with Microsoft and M365. They're the best company I've ever seen at monetizing their products. It's no longer as easy to do a capital expense versus an OpEx, operational expense, and a total cost of ownership analysis. It's really hard to do those now because you don't even have the option to purchase anything anymore. It's just a monthly fee. And this is something that you've got to take into account as you look at adding people, adding bodies, adding technology is what are those costs and are they worth it? Equipment lifecycle and management. An example here, both Ontech uses this methodology, and then we have several engineering firms that do it. But we say, hey, an endpoint device, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, doesn't matter to us. But we say that endpoint device, we want a useful life of 5 years. Our engineering staff, just due to the nature of their role, what they do, what they run on their machines, they get a new device every 3 years. But at 3 years, that device is not useless to other people within our organization or in other facets of administrative people, low-end production people, shipping, receiving. When you look at that, that machine can get cycled down to then get it out for the 5 years. But that engineering resource that needs that top line, that needs everything, they can shuffle out every 3 years. And that's how you can maintain that life cycle. What's going to drive that at the bottom line, and how do you make the best decision of purchasing? And that pass down strategies become a very effective way of modernizing technology that might be out there. And then per user costing. This is something that Ontech did 2 years ago now, as we really started to look at, we knew we were going to go through a hiring phase. So we started to look at by team. We created personas. So biz dev on our side, our sales business development has a persona. Our sales account management has a persona. Our engineering group has a persona. And we have specific software that each of those personas need. That was one of the things as we started to map out all the software that different people and personas had. We were paying for years for most of our employees all to have a diagramming tool, Lucidchart. But most of our sales team had never even logged into the app. Or if they did, it was for just a one-off purpose. Not worth it to justify spending $120 a year per person for that license. So we looked at how can we take that back? And then how can we spread or use those dollars in a different manner? Same with us, cell phones. We choose to provide cell phones to most employees. We don't obligate it anymore due to some better increases in how we can manage personal devices and manage our corporate data within those. But the ability for us to really look at and understand our IT spend and sprawl allowed us to then refocus dollars elsewhere for growth. I'm a firm believer, don't just give Microsoft money to give them money. Really look at those subscriptions. Am I on the right SKU? Am I leveraging this SKU, or is there a better way to license this? And we've got a whole team on staff here that will help your business do that. ITIL. So those, I do see a couple people on here that are IT directors, so you guys may know this framework. But ITIL is a global framework for best practices for IT service management. There are some different operational maturity levels. That's what this is considered, as an operational maturity level tool, specific for like managed service providers, like what Ontech is, versus different private sector businesses. Most organizations, especially in the small to mid-sized business sector, so under 500 employees, you typically find yourselves somewhere between level 1 and level 2, where you're reacting to problems or you're attempting to be a little bit proactive. But what ITIL encourages is the ability to get to where IT is providing value. It's not viewed as a cost center, and it's viewed as a value driver within the business. And it's really used in the business planning. This framework helps organizations evaluate their entire service management ecosystem. So people, tools, processes, workflows, and interactions with third parties. There are assessment tools of this. If you have interest of it, let me know, and I can get you guys some links to ITIL's framework. ITIL is a paid service. I do want to be honest with that. But it is a great start for those of especially internal IT or just getting into it. If you want to assess where your organization is, this is a terrific framework to do it. But the big piece that we look at as we achieve levels is the consistency of it. And that's one of the big factors as you look at scaling technology within your business is consistency. Consistent, repeatable, scalable is a term that people at Ontech hear me say all the time. And it's really about that. I can't repeat something if it's not consistent. I can't scale something if it's not repeatable. So those three stacked on top of each other really work together to drive that end result that you're looking for. A more entry level way to enter into some of the ITIL framework, but at least gives you a good starting point, is road mapping. So as an example, here's Ontech's roadmap for, we have several roadmaps. We're not as sophisticated on ITIL as like we're a level 4. We sit somewhere around level 3-ish. But our product roadmap. So every year we look at our products. What do we need to look at? What do we need to change? What's new and emerging? What's out there? What's not out there? So if we look back, I went out and put the last 12 months. So we had some conversions. We knew we needed to do some evaluations. We were unhappy with some vendors on the back end. We weren't getting the value that we thought we should be getting from some of the tools. So we started to eval those. We then pilot those because before we want to take technology to you guys, we are the guinea pigs ourselves. So we pilot those things ourselves. But this is basically a working document. Every quarter, Ryan and I meet, who are in charge of products here at Ontech. We meet and look at what do we need to look at that next quarter? What do we need to map out? And things obviously can change. If we look at Q4 this year and Q3, we had to bump some stuff up. We had to shuffle some things around due to some emerging threats that were out there. And we shuffled pieces out to really start to look at what makes sense for Ontech as a business. So some closing thoughts here today. Crawl, walk, run. ITIL looks great. It is a terrific tool. I do not want to discourage the use of it, but start smaller. ITIL is really scary when you start looking at it holistically. It's a lot. So start smaller. Start with some roadmaps. Start with just maybe some more strategic conversation and work your way up to actually looking at implementing some form of a framework. Reduce friction between users and technology. Adoption matters. It does not matter if you rolled out a new piece of technology. If people don't adopt it and use it, it's kind of a waste. So how can we reduce that friction between the user and technology? Training plays a key role in that. Getting users trained, comfortable, confident is one of the hardest pieces. Nobody likes change. So if you can gamify it, if you can find ways to incentivize them to learn that new technology, that's the best course of action you can take. Embrace technology where it fits in your specific business. Again, AI here is a really, really good example. You hear it all over the place. There's infinite amounts of use cases for it. But you've really got to look at how can I use that for my specific business? How can I provide value with it? Copilot's a really good example. We're piloting that, using that here a lot. I told the team, I'm looking for you to kind of show me how are you using $30? How is it giving us $30 of value a month per user? It's not a steep hill to climb in terms of financial justification, but are we actually using it? Is it actually giving you the value there? Focus on user experience with security already built in. Again, this is way easier when you don't have an established tech stack, but the more that you can have experience built in with the user's experience in mind, the easier it is to get them to adopt security functions. MFA would be the prime example of like one of the biggest challenges to implementation was always the end user dynamic. Every time I used to remember when we first started doing Office 365 cutovers, and people would say, so every time I open Outlook, I'm going to have to put in the MFA token. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like how we can set this up. Again, we can reduce that friction between you and Outlook by using an app password in that case. So Outlook is good. The only time you then have to use MFA is on the web sign-in. So it's how can we kind of craft this technology to make it easier for those users. Equipment life cycles allow IT and finance to share a more similar view. I've talked over the years to countless finance people that'll say, oh yeah, we bought that 10 years ago and it still works. And IT is sitting there just sweating bullets that this thing's going to die at any given day. And they're going to be scrambling to try to get it back up and running. Having those discussions about expectations. If this fails, it will equate to this amount of downtime, this amount of impact to the organization. Having those conversations and that life cycle really allows us to look at it and say, hey, typically this is a 5 to 10 year piece. We're at year 7. I'd like to replace it, and here's why. It's going to potentially, if we have an issue with it, this switch runs everything. Our business can't operate without it. So it allows you guys to have a little bit more of a shared conversation rather than let's just replace something to replace something. And that's what I've got here for our conversation today. Hey, Sean, you are absolutely correct. ITIL is complex as you want to make it. Very useful. Just a steep hill to climb if you're not familiar with it. Well, thank you, everybody. I don't see many questions coming in, so I will go ahead and wrap up for the day. Thank you all for joining. We hope you guys enjoyed the webinar and the content. As always, we're always open to feedback, so anything we can do differently, just let us know. Thank you.